far we have learned how to set up the game, how to open the game and get yourself into a good position. We've learned some tools on how to best attack your opponent. And now we're going to take kind of a closer look at each of the power pieces. The first piece that we're going to look at is the bishop. As you learned in the beginning of the lesson, the bishop only moves along the diagonal squares. He can go, so if a bishop starts on the white squares, he stays on the white squares for the entire game. You start out with two pieces, or two bishops. One is on a black square, and the other is on a white square. And it'll stay that way the entire game. So as you might imagine, the bishop is at its most powerful when it can move across the entire diagonal here. If there's a piece right here in front of it, it's at its weakest. If there's not anything on that entire diagonal, then that piece is at its most efficient and most powerful. And you might also imagine that in the middle of the board, it is also a very powerful position for this piece, as it is with most pieces, because it can cover almost any direction on the board. If you find yourself in a position like this where the bishop has something in front of it, the logical thing that you would want to do is clear its path. If you clear the path, all of a sudden you're unlocking the power of the bishop and making it so that it can actually do something in the game and participate in the game and use its bishop-y powers. So let's set up a scenario where you would clear the path of the bishop so that it could actually do something in the game. White to make the first move, as always in the chess game. Typical move. That's a very common move that goes right in line with the dream opening that I taught you earlier. Black counters with a move of his horse. This move prevents white from moving right here, so he decides to do something a little bit different. He changes his plan up and goes right to there. Black counters that by moving to right there. White decides to bring his bishop into play and moves him all the way to right there. Black decides to move one of his pawns out, and White's moving right along. He's getting a powerful position on the board. Moves his horse into play, and Black doesn't seem like a very powerful move, but it actually is. Moves his bishop to the corner there. Now looking at the position right here, White actually has more pieces in play. You can see how he's setting up a kind of a triangle shape, all moving towards the center of the board right there. Black's got to do something to change this game around, so he decides that he's going to use his bishop to clear out and kind of break down the hold that White has on the center of the board here. And the way that he needs to do that, look at all these pieces that are along this center line right here in the way of this bishop right there. So he's going to start breaking that down in the moves that are coming up. Well, it's White's turn. Does one more move there with his pawn to make a nice shape, a nice strong fortress around his king and queen down here. Well, Black does something that's probably a little bit better. He castles and really puts his king in the best position in the board, which is in the corner here. And that move right there actually sets up a really strong defense. Even though he doesn't have a whole lot of pieces in play, he's put his king in a safe position. And the White's king is a little bit exposed out here, and he's quite a few moves away still from being able to castle. Well, Black counters with a move, bringing his queen into play, giving attack to the knight that's right here. All of a sudden, Black's position is looking a little better if he can just attack this center line or this diagonal just a little bit more, break it down, getting ready for this bishop to come into play or take control of the middle board. Well, White makes his next move, take advantage of another piece, and he attacks right here towards the center of the board, which is a good move. And with that, black takes one final move to really open up the center of the board. Moves his horse in and takes that piece right there. Black has taken his first piece, but is really setting up a nice strategy to take advantage of take control of the center of the board. It's slowly breaking down, and there are now 3 pieces giving attack to this horse right here. We have the bishop, who's now been opened up, the horse, and the queen can all attack that horse. Poor little horsey. You better run. Well, white makes a pretty good move here. Well, I don't know how good it is, but let's say he takes this horse right here. Wow, we got to at least take out one of these pieces that are trying to get my little horsey. Now, the dangerous thing of what white did here is it started, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a lot of lines opening up here while the king is still exposed. He should have kept those lines closed until the king was tucked away nice and safe after a castling move. But it's a little late now because now it is black's move. And the next thing that he does is this bishop that's quietly hiding in the corner over here moves into play. Bam! Takes out that horse and gives check to the king. Well, white doesn't worry too much right now. He says, oh, not to worry. I can take you out with my pawn right here. Bam! See you. I just killed a bishop with my little lowly pawn. Nice move, black. Black says, I'm still not too worried about it. And he brings his queen down here and takes out that pawn. Now look what we have here. Can you see what position the queen is in? It's a fork, that's right. He can either get the rook or the king. Well, the king is in check, so he has to move, and there's not too many options that he has. The queen can come down here and block it, but then he would lose the queen. So probably the one that would make the most sense is just to simply move out of the way. So he moves right there. And logically, he takes the rook. Now, I'm not going to go on through the rest of the game, but at this point, this king down here is extremely safe. It's in a good fortress, and there's a lot of pieces left into play. All in all, the pieces taken are about equal, but the hold on the center of the board is completely destroyed, and the king is totally exposed. It's not looking too good for white at this point, and black definitely has an advantage at this point. So the lesson that we learn here is do not let these lines open up until your king is safely tucked behind. Make your priority getting your king back here rather than messing around with getting, the most important part is get that king. Don't leave him exposed while the lines are still opening up. So that's just a short discussion on what the bishop can do. Remember, if you want, there's lots of tools that you can use, and if you decide to use your bishop, if it's in a position where you think it can do some damage to the control of your opponent on the center of the board, start breaking it down and create a line for it. Remember, the bishops remain on the diagonal, and if you can take out some pieces or do something, it might take a little bit of sacrifice on your part, which means you might have to give up a couple pieces. But if you can get control of the board, it's better to have control and to ruin your opponent's hold on that than it is to have a few extra pawns or whatever. You might be down for a little bit, but go ahead and break down the center of that board and get control of it. Now go ahead and set up that chessboard again. Find someone to play with. If you can't find anyone to play with, open up that computer program and play a game. And in this instance, once again, don't worry about trying to win the game. Just focus on improved bishop play. See how many times you can get him involved in creating diagonals in that game. Remember, what we're trying to go for in this, and not really worrying about winning right now, what we're worrying about is just getting you to see things on the board. It's important to getting used to recognizing the position and seeing vulnerabilities and seeing advantages that you can take. That's the important part of chess, and you can only gain that advantage by looking at it and studying at it experimenting with it and seeing it over and over again, you'll begin to see things that your opponent can't see.